Nigeria whenever we're discussing food and food issues. But let's introduce the latest guest that we're having here to discuss the issues today. He is Mawule Sabla. He's a nutrition and food system expert at the Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO, one of the specialized agencies of the United Nations. Sabla, Mawule, pleasure to have you with us on the program this morning.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right, now the regular faces. First, let's welcome again Professor Abba Gambo. Professor Abba Gambo, usually joining us from our Maiduguri Network Center, where it's at the Faculty of Agriculture, University of Maiduguri. But right now, is the Dean, Faculty of Agriculture and Crop Science at Yobe State University. That's at the capital, Damaturu. Professor Abba Gambo, pleasure to have you join us.
Instantly, it's good to be back home.
Yes. And you're also joining us is the President All Farmers Association of Nigeria, Architect Kabir Ibrahim. You're welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
We also have with us another regular, the National Coordinator, National Agricultural Foundation of Nigeria, Dr. Samuel Nagadu. Welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Good morning.
Yeah. Now, should we start? Let me take Dr. Samuel Nagadu first and ask. There are people who say that food security is just as delicate as national security. Where do you place? They say one can lead to a physical breakdown of security. How do you place food security in a nation's life?
Well, I look at it the other way around. What I see is food insecurity leads to national insecurity. Because in everyday language in Nigeria, we say an angry man. A hungry man is an angry man. And so, in Nigeria, right from Abuja through the spread of this country, where we found out that so many people are underprovided, especially from what we see now, the urban poor and the people who are so poor in the rural environment that they cannot even meet their production needs. And so the food insecurity stays on. We have a lot of fertile land in Nigeria, but what will make it possible is every day getting out of the reach of the ordinary Nigerian. We have land, but the credit is not there. And if the credit is not there, you cannot get to the farm and be productive. So I still maintain the fact that if we don't have food security, we are going to have a lot of national insecurity.
Now, let's also, let's take your thoughts, Mawule. Let's take your thoughts about the delicate placing of these two issues.
Thank you very much. And once again, let me bring you greetings from His Excellency Sofian Koroma, the FAO representative for Nigeria, and also acknowledge the very fruitful collaboration between the Food and Agriculture Organization and the government and people of Nigeria. And His Excellency, the President, is really passionate about nourishing Nigeria, not just feeding Nigerians, but nourishing Nigeria. Because following on the MDGs to the Sustainable Development Goals, the states and governments decided to ensure that the SDG 2 is focusing on food security, nutrition, and sustainable agriculture. Because we have realized that it's not sufficient to just have food. Nigerians must be nourished. And what does it mean, being nourished? Being nourished implies that you are able to diversify your production so that your population have access to diversified food of different nutrient sources. So there is an aspect of food security that is referred also to as hidden hunger, where your population are deficient in essential micronutrients. So for some time now, FAO's programs, whether it's in fisheries and aquaculture, livestock, or crops, or natural resource management, we are very much focusing on making sure that we inform the population and educate the population to understand the importance of nutrition security. Making sure that women are capacitated. The only way to this world is through a woman. So we want to make sure that our women are in optimal nutritional well-being so that even at birth, they give birth to babies that are already healthy because they themselves are are very healthy and in optimal nutritional well-being. And those children have the right birth weight and are able to grow up in an environment that ensures optimal health, optimal nutritional well-being. So when we are talking about food security, there is that aspect that ensures nutrition security, which is an investment. For every dollar you invest in nutrition, you obtain as much as $16 to $32 according to The Economist. So we want to make sure that our population are in optimal health so that even when they go to the farm, their productivity increases. And we ensure that they are able to produce what they need. Over 70% of our population are in agriculture. We first of all have to meet their needs. There is a significant amount of food waste and food losses because we do not have the technology to process and transform them and organize the market in such a way that the food is available both physically and economically in terms of financial access, because we are all not farmers. But if you are not a farmer and you want to buy food, you should have access to the food you want to buy. And you must buy food and diversify your food supply base so that you meet your nutritional well-being. So this year's World Food Day is really focusing the Director General of FAO, His Excellency Graziano da Silva.
Let me just jump in there,
Yes.
Mawule Sabla, so that we get the other two guests
Right.
who haven't spoken on this to make their foundational statements. Professor Abba Gambo, from your perspective, what is the status of Nigeria's food security?
Thank you very much, Kinsley. Good morning, Nigerians. Now, I want to start from the basics. Let's just define the concept of food security first so that we can lay a foundation. Right. The Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations at the Food Security Convention says food security is the availability, affordability, and a balanced diet for a particular individual. Availability means the food is there. Affordability means that individual has the per capita income to get the food, and then the food must be balanced. Balanced in the sense that all the nutritional status that a man needs for the day must be included there. But then it now went a little bit further, talking about not just the human population, but then even the animals in a particular country, both domestic and not domestic, you have to feed them. The animals in the zoo, the animals that are in the forest. So now the food security concept becomes something much more bigger than what we were actually talking before. Now your question is, what is the perception today? From the Northeast, I'm happy there are some very interesting news. Most of the IDPs that we are always talking about have gone back to their lands. Some have done substantial farming, most especially in Yobe State, where no IDP camp exists presently, and then all of them are back to their lands. They are all gone back to the farm with plenty of good news of harvest, etc. But then when you look at the typical food security scenario in Nigeria, Kinsley, Nigeria is still not food secured.
Why?
Not. Because with the rainfall pattern, most farmers went to the farms. Access to credit for the first time in the history of Nigeria, we got a single digit of 9%. And I must commend the federal government and the Minister of Agriculture for that. For the very first time, we're getting a single digit of 9%. But then some natural issues came. Most of the places that we call food basket of Nigeria had terrible floods, most especially in the north central areas, Kwara, Niger, Kogi, which are Benue, all these are places we call food baskets. Then apart from that, the constant clashes between the farmers, herdsmen, has also put a very big dent on what we have. And even in Borno State, where I come from, the insurgency is still there. The fertile areas of Borno State, where you have the Lake Chad Basin, fertile soils where we do plenty of rice and wheat before, Southern Chad project, etc., those areas are still not accessible. So these are the issues. The rainfall pattern has been excellent. Farmers were able to get credit facilities at 9% digit, which is very good. Then, of course, the farmers were actually heavily mobilized in so many states. And in the Northeast, I must give credit to the FAO because they were actually given some seeds and some little fertilizer to the IDPs that went back to their original location so that they can begin to pick up the bits and pieces of their lives. And then mostly all of them were farmers. So they farmed. They farmed actually. But then the little skirmishes here and there has actually made the production not to be available for the whole of Nigeria.
Is there a special reference or a special parameter for ascertaining food security? Is food security determined on a year-to-year basis, or is a trend? I mean, it can be you have food security one year, food insecurity another year, or when you look at the totality of it, so over a period of time, 5 years behind, 5 years ahead, you have the food security. How do you frame food security in terms of space and time, Professor Gambo, before I bring in architect Kabir Ibrahim?
Okay, now we are talking about the human population of Nigeria, which is about 193 million. The estimation is that by 2030, we are going to be 250 million Nigerians. Let me give a typical example. Rice, for example. Rice and stew happens to be one of the commonest meals in most homes. When we came, they said the total demand for rice for 180 million Nigerians is 5 million metric tons. And at that point, that was about 3 years ago, Nigeria was producing only 3 million metric tons. The remaining 2 million metric tons has to be imported, and it was costing the government about 517 billion naira per annum. So now the question is how to close the gap. Closing the gap means you have to do certain things. And the first thing we said, which the government took, was instead of planting rice just once, we can actually go ahead and do the two-season planting, which the president launched in Kebbi State in November 2015 and has given boost to so many farmers in the northwestern region. And then another thing that is of very importance that we must know is, it's not a kind of situation that is dynamic. This year, we have good harvest, so everybody is happy. 180 million Nigerians are all going to bed with their tummy full. That's the issue we are talking about. It has never happened, Kingsley. Since our independence, Nigeria has never achieved the kind of food security goals we are talking about. Never.
All right. Thank you very much, Professor Abba Gambo. Let's bring in architect Kabir Ibrahim. Architect Ibrahim, from your perspective, what is the status of Nigeria's food security?
Well, it's far from where we want it to be. There is a lot of food insecurity all over the place, but a lot of efforts are in place to make sure that this is achieved and sustained. The new policy promoting agriculture now is bringing in so many people who are hitherto in other activities. Even people in the petroleum industry are taking up agriculture. So it is hoped that everybody would look at agriculture as a business rather than a form of subsistence. And that way, so many investments will be put there. And credit lines would be open as there is some liberalization of the percentages that banks charge. And there are so many windows that like the CBN and other sectors are opening and making available to farmers So we believe that in time, with the right kind of push, and if this tempo continues, we'll be able to sustainably provide food security for Nigerians. Mind you, there are many, many things that have to come to play for you to sustain this. You must be able to store what you produce, to reduce the loss in harvest, to also be able to process what you do. And you also must be able to have a marketing mechanism. Because if I produce yam, for instance, I don't eat yam all year round. I will have to use money to buy other things that I don't produce. So I must be able to sell my yam at a very good price to be able to afford rice or anything else. So it's a mixture of so many things that you have to do to attain that. If you take the United States, for instance, most people there are full grown. They are not short, stunted like me, because there is the availability of food and at an affordable price, and you will be able to earn sufficient money to buy food. In Nigeria, we have to look at the whole gamut of these things that make life better. And everybody has to make contributions. Government, the private sector, and everybody else.
It would seem, therefore, that focus must change from the previous idea of just eating. There's a proverb in Yoruba that says, "Omo mi oyo ni mo mo, then ki se pe mi ejeran." In those days, you could tell a child would say, I am not full. That is permissible. But I have not eaten meat. Nobody wants, that's luxury. It would seem, therefore, that attention must change into some scientific mode of determining what food security is, not just availability. Yeah. How then do we carry the large majority of Nigerians along in this area of selecting the productive part of feeding?
You have said it all. We must change our mindset as to what is food. And what do you mean when you talk of food security? It doesn't mean just food. It means food that is balanced, as Prof said. It has to be nutritiously valuable to you. You don't take egg, for instance. You should not look at eating egg a day as luxury. I am essentially a poultry farmer. The international standard is that a person should eat 1 egg a day. If in my village
irrespective of age?
Yes. In fact, the cholesterol level or contribution is very minimal when it comes to just egg. People are misunderstanding it. There is a good cholesterol and bad cholesterol. A contribution of good cholesterol from egg is very good and very high and desirable for growth, for wellness and all that. Now, coming to the global thing, if you take the school feeding program that we are witnessing today, there is a mixture of so many things, protein, carbohydrate and all that in a small pack at probably 70 naira. But a choice of these things is being deliberately made so that they contribute to the wellness of the individual. It's not just anything. Maybe if you just put gari for 70 naira, there is nothing, no protein, nothing, no semblance of it or anything, it will not work. It will just be food. So we must make a deliberate effort to provide for people what is really, really, really balanced. People must eat what is balanced to be productive. Someone doctor alluded to the fact that you must eat well and have a balanced and nutritious diet to be able to even go to the land. He is very realistic in Nigeria today because the level of mechanization is still very low. I foresee a situation, maybe in my lifetime, when there will be so much mechanization that the population of our farmers will reduce to probably less than 10%. Today we are like 70%. In the United States, the farmers are only 2%. In France, they are only 3%. There is mechanization. So as we get mechanized, the numbers of the people in agriculture will reduce. and the commercialization will come in, processing will take effect, and we will even be able to export processed produce.
All right. Thank you very much, Architect Kabir Ibrahim. Let's bring in again Mawule Sabla of the FAO. From the FAO perspective, what is its perception of the food security situation in Nigeria?
Yes, let me once again congratulate the government of Nigeria, because when you take the agricultural promotion policy under the Economic and Growth Recovery Program, with the Federal Ministry of Agriculture, we've worked with them to develop the food security nutrition strategy. And let me allude to what Prof and Architect referred to earlier on about the importance of making sure that we balance our diets and we organize our food system. Because Nigeria has a huge potential, not only to feed its close to 200 million population, but even to feed West Africa, other African countries. The agricultural potential of this country is enormous. But when we talk about food security, it means that all your population have access, both physical and economic, at all times, to food that provides them with the optimum health that they need. Architect made reference to him being stunted earlier on. When you take the number of children in Nigeria that are stunted, and we are not just talking about you are too short for your age, but it means you are also stunted in your mind. So you cannot repair that. They become an economic burden for the rest of their lives. So it is therefore important for Nigeria for us to be able to address the problem rather than trying to cure it.
What is the FAO seeing in Nigeria today?
What we are seeing is that there's increasing investment in not just the normal way of doing farming, but trying as much as possible to organize the agricultural system, the food system, in such a way that we are able to identify what are the available nutrient sources. There are a lot of our indigenous foods that are disappearing. Moi, for example, is one of the very nutritious diets that you find in this country. Diversified vegetable sources in Nigeria. How do we educate Nigerians to understand the value of these foods? So one of the things that the FAO is doing is to make sure that the agricultural extension system, we embed nutrition education into the agricultural curriculum of the training of the agricultural extension officers. Architect made reference to the school feeding program. We want to make sure that children, right from childhood, understand the importance of nutrition. So nutrition education should be included in the curriculums of our schools, from primary to secondary, even to the university level. Then people are informed, because sometimes it's not that we do not have access. We have access, but we do not have the knowledge and the understanding of what to grow, how to process, how to even cook our food, so that we conserve the nutritional value of our food. Everybody should be, every Nigerian should eat 400 grams of fruit a day. And there are fruits in this country. Various indigenous local fruits are available. We need to add value to them, process them, make them available. Livestock, milk, yogurt, cheese. Talk about these commodities. They are there. They are available.
Yeah, well that's Sabla. Thank you very much for your response. But I would like us to return to, if you like, the frameworks articulated by Professor Gambo and Architect Kabir Ibrahim with regard to the concept of food security. Professor Gambo indicated at least 3 items in that mix. 1, availability. 2, affordability and balanced diet. You've spoken extensively on the issue of balanced diet. Right. Architect Ibrahim then introduced the aspect of storage, loss reduction, processing, and marketing. I would like Dr. Sam Negedu, let's now decompose all of these factors in the mix of food security. Availability, for instance. What are the challenges that Nigeria faces with regard to availability of food in the food security mix?
They are enormous. One of them was mentioned by the President Afan. Storage, transportation. We have food perishing in localities. I had experience around the middle of this year in Taraba. I found out that major bridges were gone. And if you go, you find out that there's a lot of production in livestock and in crops. They cannot get out. And when they try to come out, they are not that affordable. We also have a global, beautiful picture removed from the realities of the localities. Now, the president often produces a lot of eggs. The eggs, the neighbors to his farm, most of them may not even be able to get out to buy, because most of it may go into the city of Kano, of Katsina. The awareness by even the local person that he should meet his nutritional demands is still not there. There is some common thing in Nigeria. They say, I eat 3 times a day, and you have mentioned it. Yes, my child ate gari this morning. He also ate gari this afternoon. And this evening, he's going to have, we have enough gari. Is that something? This education mentioned by the FAO has to go to the grassroots level. But then, Professor Gambo will tell me that he's doing a lot of classroom job. The government at the state and the federal level have good intention. We want them to make that good intention reachable. Extension is still not what we wanted. Either encourage the private extension service so that this awareness can grow. That somebody who produces a leafo will get the value and not take them all the way to town to sell. You have people growing ugu at the back of their houses. They are not having enough minerals. You have this poor education within our system. And some people will tell you outright, yes, I've eaten. Well, I thank God I even have something to eat. That statement is still sound and in place in Nigeria. And I think we should get to a point that we will say, okay, the average Nigerian is well informed. The elite in Nigeria is shifting to health food. We want it to reach down because the other Nigerians are still removed from that reality.
Now, since independence, every government seems to recognize that something needs to be done, and you can see from our history that we have had various attempts at improving our food security. We had Operation Feed the Nation, we had Green Revolution, D-Free was there and all that. Now, we are where we are now. What, after all the different contributions, what is it that a government should be doing now, in terms of this sitting government and possibly a coming government, to redirect sharply, predominantly, our food deficiency? Something that becomes a national program, not just a slogan, but a direction that government begins to chart, that everybody follows. At one time, they told us everybody could farm. We all started to farm. But we still have this deficiency. Why is this deficiency persisting?
Thank you very much, sir. Now, please permit me to expand the balanced dieting, because everybody has been talking about nutritional. Let's just take it to the basics. What we mean by balance is there are 4 classes of food that you must eat every day for you to have a balanced diet. Number 1, milk and milk products. Number 2, meat and meat products. Number 3, grains and cereals. Then number 4, fruits and vegetables. If these 4 classes of food are never captured in the 3 diets or the 3 dishes you eat every day, then definitely, however great you are, however big you are not eating a balanced diet.
But do you realize that our local communities have some of these things at their beckon and call? They just have it at the back.
Mr. Okeo, I sincerely agree with you, but then let's just do a simple analysis quickly. Pounded yam with egusi soup. You understand? Yes. Pounded yam, pure starch. So you now have what I mean by the carbohydrates, you have that one. Yes. Then let's take at the egusi soup, depending on your pocket, that's how the soup is, right? So egusi, the egusi is there, melon, which is pure vegetable also with some proteins. Then you have the oil that is going to be there. So it's now taking charge of the other products I'm talking about. Then the meat and the fish. I said meat and meat products. Yes. You understand? But then after eating your pounded yam and egusi, excellently, you wipe your hands, you clean your hands. What happens to the milk and milk products? So that milk issue, it's the major thing that is hindering food security in Nigeria all over. Every individual is supposed to take a glass of milk per day, which is lacking in Nigeria, definitely. But then all the other 3 groups are there. Now to your question quickly, what can the government do sharply to make sure that the narrative is changed? And the only thing the government can do sharply to make sure that a new trajectory is brought into agriculture and food security is by mopping up the youths into agriculture. Today, there are 10.3 million youths that are out of school, and more than 90% of them are in the northern states. So what happens to them? And you have to feed them. So we want a situation whereby the government will come up with an intensive and motivational project that will endear the youths, all of them. You now see them parading after NYSC, 2 years, 3 years, no job. So we want a kind of situation whereby you can motivate all the youths into agriculture, and that is going to change the narrative sharply. If, for example, every year the NYSC graduates are made to engage into some form of agricultural activities, the food security situation is going to change, definitely. And one thing with agriculture is something that you plant it and then you reap as quickly as possible. The issue of Dr. Negedu saying Alefo, which is amaranthus, the gestation period is just 21 days. You plant amaranthus today, exactly 21 days your amaranthus is ready, you go to the market and then you get the money. So it's a kind of physical thing, physical.
Well, Professor Gambo, on the issue of availability and then the knock-on effect it has on affordability and ultimately, therefore, on balanced diet, Dr. Negedu gave a scenario. He says that we can find a number of communities that, despite the ongoing methods of agricultural production, there's a lot of production that is going on. I know we know seeds and seedlings are pouring in, and then there are efforts to ginger up agricultural production. But he then talked about the evacuation of the agricultural produce when they are available. Bridges have been washed out, and then the farmers are unable, therefore, to evacuate their produce. You've been a consultant to the Governors Forum. The issue has been there for several decades of having to construct rural infrastructural roads to assist with the evacuation of this agricultural produce. Why does it appear to be the case that the subnational governments continue to pay lip service to this very significant link in ensuring that there is availability and a knock-on effect on affordability of the food security chain?
Thank you very much, Kingsley. In July 2001, the 19 northern governors consulted Admiral Murtala Nyako, Dr. Shetima Mustafa, and the present Minister of Agriculture, Chief Audu Ogbe, to come up with a Marshall Plan for the 19 northern states. The major recommendation that was given is, when you grow and then you harvest, what happens to it? So that's the value addition. Kingsley, 2001 to date, all the 19 northern states, none has put up a simple processing plant for any agricultural product. Let's take the issue of Kano State, for example. Kano grows plenty of tomatoes across the Kura, Churomawa axis. The tomatoes are there. But then the post-harvest loss, Kingsley, is 69% according to our statistics. So every 100 fruits of tomato that you harvest, 69 doesn't get to the table. It's rotten. So we now said, why can't the state governments put up a small processing plant based on your comparative advantage? If you are a citrus state, you can put up a small citrus processing plant. If you are an onion state, you can still put a processing plant to make the onions into flakes, whatever, etc. But the issue is, we did a peer review under the Nigerian Governors Forum, 36 states of Nigeria. Kingsley, the fact is, no state has a single agro-processing plant existing governmentally. There is none. And I stand to be quoted. And then the second issue is, you know, the farming procedure, at the time you're doing the harvest, for example, yam that everybody is talking about, when you're slashing and then digging up, you also put some little pricks on the yam and it's gone. The tuber, once you just prick it, as little as possible, it cannot reach the market because the color begins to change right there. Your popo, as you're harvesting, if there is a little prick somewhere, it can't reach. Even the bananas and the plantains. So you make sure that you harvest them in modern ways that they cannot be injured because every injury takes it out. So Kingsley, the most important thing is, whether we like it or not, the government has to come up with processing plants to add value. That is one. Then secondly, accessibility of roads, very important. Now the people at Taraba, all their yams are going to be rotten. The flooded areas, all the rice is already gone. The legumes, cowpea, soybean, etc., they are already gone. But then if there are some kind of buffer situations, NIMET gave the recommendation that 9 states are going to be flooded. And I was expecting the Federal Ministry of Agriculture to be proactive. Get ready. Because some floods actually, agriculturally, are beneficial and advantageous. I'm sorry to say, not the human loss. But agriculturally, new nutrients are brought, organic manure are brought. Exactly. So the soil becomes more fertile. So if the flooded area is now receding back, there are little crops that you can put, and then you can even gain more than what you have. A very good example is sweet potato. If the rice farm is washed away, and then you can instantly put sweet potato, what you're going to get out of it might even be more from the original rice you put into. But then all those farmers are there without any incentives from anywhere.
Yeah, that has to do with extension services that not only will be required.
That's right.
I'm sorry, Professor Abagambo, thanks a lot. I'm just wondering, Dr. Negado, we have something before we bring in Architect Ibrahim again.
There's one link that is missing here.
Namely?
Government has changed hands over these years, and there's no continuation in programs. This continuation, the government, as we keep on saying, is a continuum. And if it is to be so, let there be positive carryover of the good effects. But for now, programs are identified with government, and when they are out of place, they are dropped. And this is happening more at the state level where agriculture is happening.
I don't know. Well, thank you very much, Dr. Negado. Architect Kabi Ibrahim, this aspect of rural infrastructure, particularly with regard to roads and then access and then value addition, even at the cottage industry level, why have we not keyed in? Because from what you say and what you have said on this program and all other guests that we have had, look, even if we took subsistence agricultural production, excuse me, as we have it in Nigeria today, the chances are that our farmers are very productive. I mean, they could be more productive, but the post-harvest losses are significant. And then, of course, you have the cost that is added as a result of difficulty in evacuating the harvest. So what do we need to get right? Babangida, under his military administration, brought in DFRI, but right now, state governments hardly talk about that. I mean, some of them, I'm saying not all of them do. Local governments, they have been emasculated by the state governments. What do we need to do to reach the farms, to get to the farm gate much more readily, much more easily? And then also, help with the creation or the establishment of cottage industries, if not by the government, but at least through facilities to enterprising individuals?
There are many factors here that you need to look at. First and foremost, I do not subscribe to the notion that the state will provide cottage industries, processing places and all that. No, but the government will create the enabling environment for people to be able to do that. Fundamentally, the agriculture promotion policy is encouraging us, incentivizing us to be able to invest into agriculture as a people, just like we invest in other businesses. It is saying it is prudent for us to go into agriculture. As we elect our representatives, we should also ensure that they go in with the notion that they will do those projects that will enhance what we do in agriculture. If it be the provision of feeder roads, access and all that, we hold them onto it. If a person from my village aspires to become a member of the House of Assembly in my state, and we look at the nooks and crannies of our local government and find that the production areas are not accessible, and when they produce, they cannot take what they produce to the market, we will charge them to make sure that these places are opened up before we re-elect them. We will not encourage our youth to be giving money and motorcycles and drugs and all that, to come and campaign and all that. We will charge these people to do what is needed to make the majority of our people more comfortable, rather than just a few that they select. This is politics. Politics has to change. Our attitude to politics. This is what happens all over the place. If you go to rural England, there was a time we used to go to attend the Royal Agricultural Show. It was going on for 161 years in Stonehenge. If you go by train from London, Paddington Station, up to Manchester, left and right, you see animals grazing in plush green, and you see farms well developed, fenced, a lot of things happening. And then this place that is selected for the agri show is owned by the people, by the farmers. In fact, the Prime Minister of England does not go for any of the ceremonies. It is the Queen that goes. It is not government. No politics about it. People do agriculture, and they want to do it.
The Queen is head of state.
No, hang on. I'm talking so that our DG in Nafan will understand that we do not need to cry if the minister or the president do not attend our agricultural show. They are not necessarily supposed to be there. We must encourage the farmers and the people interested in agriculture to be there. That is the way to incentivize these people. I have touched a number of issues, but the most important one is for us to be able to create processing zones, cottage industries and all that. It is not the government per se. It is the government is supposed to provide the enabling environment. Even for patronage, if I was governor, for instance, I would not patronize anybody who would make money from my government to buy a car, buy an aircraft, buy anything. No, I would patronize those people who will reinvest, who will give back to society.
Give us an example of what kind of environment you want. If you say government does not have to create cottage industry, they don't have to, what is the environment you're talking about?
I will tell you what has happened before 1975 in Jigawa State. Now Jigawa State, Audubako created so many things, many dams, and even tomato factory in Jigawa by the road. You see it. It is moribund. It is not working. Government cannot run a business. It is proven. In fact, government is divesting, is selling off all over the world. But the government will create the enabling environment for you and I to be able to build industry. Either by patronizing what we know how to do, and by liberalizing acquisition of land, and probably making it easier for me to do business, to set up that, and then
Those
create
dams,
rebates.
are they not created? Are they not an environment that encourages people to come and locate farms near? From Kano, as you enter part of Kaduna State, you see some strings of dams. Are they not part of the environment that government needs?
They are, yes.
Bagauda, those areas, you find that
yes, they are. In
So
fact, that is why even from the rudiments of performance in the agricultural show, Kano State always comes first, because all these enabling environments are there, and the people are able to farm, and they produce a lot more than other places where these things are non-existent. It works, and we should encourage it. People should get into government with the proper understanding of what needs to be done, and we put them in place because they can do what we want them to do.
All right, Architect Ibrahim, let's pause in the meantime. We're taking a short break. When we return, we continue with the conversation. We'll also take the tweets that have come in. Tweets. Now, the effort of the federal government in farming is highly commendable, but more needs to be done. The Anchor Borrowers program of the CBN has to be expanded to attract more hands to farming, particularly the youth.
And still from Dele Jack Solomon, it is high time each state in Nigeria specializes in mass production of agricultural products where it has comparative advantage, backed by interest-free loans and well-equipped millennium settlements to lure idle youth to the farm. Good storage facilities, basic infrastructure, and buyback policies provided by government at all levels will also go a long way in ensuring food security in our country.
Babagana Mohammed tweets, now, affordable mechanization of agriculture, reduction of post-harvest losses, and effective agricultural research are the strongest ways of ensuring food security, not just in Nigeria, but anywhere else in the world.
And Ichena Melody tweets, to me, if we can solve the problem of roads, multiple taxation, and power, we have achieved 85% of food security in Nigeria.
Anas Umar tweets, for Nigeria to achieve food security, government should make the sector attractive to the youth so that many more hands can come in. Not just that, funding is also something that we need to focus on.
And from someone who calls himself on common sense, Nigerians, the president currently is embracing mechanized production as an easy way to boost agriculture.
Let's just go down from our third set of tweets. Go to Suleiman Yahaya. Says that what we need to do more, especially, is engaging the youth with the aid of mechanization. That is channeling youth corps members, that's to say the NYC, during their primary assignment with the target of increasing crop yields as well as having the government as caretaker.
And from Prince Simon, a country like Nigeria where the population is increasing rapidly should not ignore famine. If it dares, hunger and starvation will be the order of the day. That should not be our portion. Please let everybody go back to the farm.
And lastly, from Kachala Mala, it says funding of agricultural research institutions is key in determining food sufficiency, he writes, in Nigeria. But Femi, those are some of the tweets. I just wanted us to return to the issue of availability, evacuation, post-harvest losses, and before we get into the more elaborate issues of storage, that has to do with the strategic grains reserves and so on and so forth. That there is, for example, a place in Edo State. It's called Obadan. If you know the spelling of Ibadan, then instead of I, you make it an O. I first went to Obadan nearly 50 years ago, and Obadan was the locus for plantain harvests. Plantain. And so the plantains you find in Lagos normally would come from Obadan. Obadan to Lagos. They, of course, take them by what then were 911 trucks. There were no trucks bigger than 911. You had Austin and so on and so forth. But the road from what was the highway to Auchi, the road was hopeless. And there used to be a lot of vehicular breakdown, particularly of those 911 trucks. And so they would spend some days trying to fix their trucks, while they are trying to evacuate the plantains that they have bought, the traders now, to take them first to Benin and then from Benin to Lagos. 50 years later, I don't think that road has been fixed. That story is virtually the same as it were in most rural parts of Nigeria. The road has not been fixed, it's not been repaired 50 years later. I'm wondering, gentlemen, both Dr. Negedu and Ibrahim, Dr. Architect Ibrahim was saying, look, get politicians to be interested, let them focus on this. Has the agricultural body, you know, or have farmers as a body tried now to get themselves into a lobby group to persuade local governments, Algon, for instance, even though we know that they are emasculated, because these are roads, you know, within their province, their jurisdiction to handle, to say, look, these are the things that we need. Yes, we know you interact with the Federal Ministry of Agriculture, Agricultural Research, but in terms of having motorable feeder roads, will the agricultural unions try to take this part?
Well, often, you know, we are present in the 774 local governments. And the peculiarities in the road conditions and farm to market access and losses that we suffer because of the bad condition of this, it's been a very, very serious problem to us. Recently, we had a West Africa and Central Africa conference on post-harvest loss in Yaradua Center. I wonder whether you were there. We are looking at the picture globally, you know, in these zones, in these regions of Africa. It is a very serious problem. And you have alluded to the fact that the local governments feel emasculated by the states and all that. We still go back to what I was positing, that for anybody to get mandate to represent us, we must come to them with a catalogue of demands that they must meet. If we do that, we make these things topical. People treat these things as priority. Otherwise, it is exceedingly difficult, even for a government in place, to be able to ascertain clearly what needs to be done in all the areas in Nigeria. It is important that we as farmers, as a group, work a little more to sensitize our people to form an advocacy block to be able to talk to everybody, not only limited to the Federal Ministry of Agriculture or the state government or even local government's headquarters. Even from the ward level, we must be able to come forward to say, look, this is our problem, address it, and catalog it, show exactly what, like the issue of Obada. Okay, I was in a conference, AATF conference in Kampala. In Kampala, I was given a food item on the menu every day for every meal, and it is their local, I don't know what they call it, you know, it's made out of plantain. It is produced like gari. It is flour. Yeah, they make it like flour, and it is like fufu. Different soups are given. It is almost there every day. It is the common factor in all the meals that come. It is the common factor, and we can do that. We are only doing that to gari. Okay. We can do that to many of these things.
As we begin to wind down on this discussion and look forward, we hear of Agenda 2030. What are the things that we can begin to look forward in this agenda that would help us reach where we want to reach?
Thank you very much. Agenda 2030 and the Sustainable Development Goals. We are saying that zero hunger is achievable in our generation, in our lifetime. In fact, we produce enough food, sufficient to be able to feed everybody in this world. Of course, I will always say that food is something that we should not politicize. Like we made reference to it. I mean, it's fundamental for national security. But if you take the SDGs, you realize that nutrition underlines most of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. So we are saying that if you're able to make sure that you put your population in optimal nutritional well-being, you will be able to drive your economic development in a very strategic way. But one of the factors that we have been missing is capacity, which has not come to the fore. We've spoken, Professor Negedu made reference to the need for education. But capacity is key. Even for small, medium-scale enterprises, you need capacity to be able for people to understand what they need to be producing. Documentation of operational procedures, record-keeping systems, most of our small, medium-scale enterprises, they don't have it. So when you change one staff, another staff comes in, they're doing things differently. Consistency in the way we plan. We have beautiful plans and strategies in place, policies and programs in place. But without the capacity and the continuous training to reinforce capacity. If you want youth to go into agriculture, you need to reinforce their capacity. You need to organize the system in such a way that you produce enough food technologists, you produce enough engineers, you produce sufficient, and make sure you retain them within the agricultural value chain.
All right, Sabla, thank you very much. Professor Abba Gambo, still on the aspect of food security relating to storage. Are we up to scratch with regard to our strategic grains reserves?
There are 33 strategic silos in Nigeria, in 33 states. The silos, big silos, you have them in 33 states out of the 36 states. And Kingsley, to amaze you, that more than 99% of the silos are empty. So that is a basic fact. But then quickly I want to add that the losses are not just on the farm or on the road. Losses are also in the homes. So we have to bring, Nigerians are naturally wasteful people. Why do you have to cook more than what you need when you know that there is nobody you can give to? So the wastage is there. Kingsley, have you seen an angry woman peeling yam? She peels half of it up with it. So these are very important things, really. Cook that will be enough for the family, and then, but then by the time you open the fridge, you see a goosey of day before yesterday, pounded yam of 3 days ago, and at the end of the day, when NEPA goes up, you have to throw everything into the dustbin, etc. No, we are very wasteful. We have to take into
your closing thoughts, please, on this discussion.
We need to maintain consistent education of our farming populace and sustain this issue of our awareness that insecurity in food supply can create a destabilizing role in our polity and checkmate our growth.
Thank you.
All right, Dr. Samuel Negedu, of course, is the National Coordinator of the National Agric Foundation of Nigeria. We'd like to thank you for being part of our conversation. I do hope you follow up with architect Kabir Ibrahim with regard to creating an advocacy group to the subnationals with particular focus on feeder roads as well as greater attention to agricultural production and evacuation. Thanks a lot for being with us on the program. Of course, architect Kabir Ibrahim, one of our regulars, president of Farmers Association of Nigeria. Thank you for being with us today. We also would like to appreciate Mawule Sabla, who is a nutrition and food system expert at the FAO, that's the Food and Agriculture Organization, one of the specialized agencies of the United Nations. Last but not the least, Professor Abba Gambo, coming all the way from Damaturu, where he is at the moment, Dean, Faculty of Agriculture and Crop Science at the Yobe State University. Professor Gambo, thanks a lot for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
And by the way, Femi, you know, we didn't have time to do with that in terms of balanced diet. On one of our programs in the past, Professor Gambo did give us a map, the nutritional map of Nigeria, according to zones. And I remember him saying that the Southeast has the highest nutritional value in terms of their diets in the country. So that does it for us in our conversation segment. Let's go over now to sports.
Appearances. Here we go then for this Group E.
Nigeria survived a late scare to beat Libya 3-2 in the 2019 Africa Cup of Nations AFCON qualification Group E match in Tunisia.